Hi kids, welcome to Kid Konnection, week 3 of our Heart of a Heroes unit. And tonight we're going to learn that heroes make wise choices. But you know we're also going to talk about a superhero, right? Tonight, let's think about Spider-Man. You know how Spider-Man shoots those webs and they get all over the bad guys, the villains, they get all sticky and they trap them? Well, there's something in our life that will trap us like that too. And it's called sin. Sin is doing anything that God doesn't want us to do, like lying or being unkind or disobeying our parents or stealing. All of those are sins, and sin is a trap. Once you start sinning, you sin more and more and more and make a real mess of your life. So it's really important that we learn to be wise. And most important, that we ask God to make us wise so we can make wise choices. Do you remember Joseph? We learned about him a little bit last week. He was a 17-year-old boy whose father loved him more than any of the other brothers in the family. Joseph was Israel's favorite son. And remember, Israel gave him a very special coat, a fancy robe. And Joseph's brothers hated him because he was his dad's favorite and because his dad gave him that special gift. And then remember, Joseph went out to see them pasturing the flocks, and they threw him in a pit. And then they sold him to some traders, and those traders took him to a faraway country called Egypt. And there Joseph was sold again to a man named Potiphar. And Potiphar was in the army of Egypt, and he was one of the king's top officials. So he was really high up in the army. And he's the one who bought Joseph and made him a slave in his household. Now, Joseph's in a pretty bad situation, right? He's a long way from home. His brothers have no doubt really hurt his feelings, and maybe his body is hurt too. And now he's in a place that he doesn't know the language, he doesn't necessarily know the customs, and he's all alone with nobody. And so Joseph chose to be wise and to trust God. And he became a really, really good servant. He was a slave, but he worked hard and he was trustworthy and he was wise. And Potiphar noticed that his household was blessed because Joseph was being blessed by God for making wise choices. Well, not only was Joseph wise and hardworking and trustworthy, he was also very handsome. And Potiphar's wife noticed Joseph, and she said, "Sin with me." And he said, "No, I won't do that. Your husband Potiphar has put me in charge of everything except for you. I'm over his whole household. You're the only thing that he hasn't given me to take care of. I won't sin against him, and I won't sin against God." See, Joseph knew that any sin, even though maybe we can see how it hurts people, any sin that we commit is a sin against God, because it's God who we ultimately need to be obedient to. So Joseph said no when Potiphar's wife asked him to sin. But one day, Joseph went into Potiphar's house, and nobody was in the house except for Potiphar's wife. And she took hold of his arm, and she said, "Sin with me." And he ran out of the house. But because she was holding onto his arm, his outer clothing, his cloak, came off. So she was holding it after Joseph ran off. And she said to the other servants, "Look at this. Joseph tried to sin against me, and when I screamed for help, he ran away, and here's his cloak to prove it." And then when her husband came home, she told Potiphar the same story. "That slave that you brought into our house, he wanted to sin against me. And when I hollered for help, he ran away, but I grabbed his cloak." Potiphar was so mad at Joseph. He threw him in jail. He threw him in prison. Well, this is another really bad situation for Joseph. He didn't sin against Potiphar's wife. Potiphar's wife told a lie, and Joseph was being punished for something he didn't do. And so he could have been really pouty. He could have been really sad. He could have been a really bad prisoner, disobeying the authorities there. But Joseph made wise choices. Even though he was in that bad, unfair situation, he trusted God. And the jailer, the man who was the head of the prison, he noticed what a good man Joseph was and how God blessed him. So he put Joseph in charge of the prison. So even in that bad situation, Joseph making wise choices improved his situation, and he was able to serve the other prisoners there. So that's a pretty rough time that Joseph has had. Both being sold into slavery, being lied about, being put in prison, but he trusted God, and God gave him the power and the strength to make wise choices. Well, I wonder if you can make some wise choices. I'm going to read some situations, and I want you to use your thumbs, okay? And if it's a wise decision that you hear, I want you to do a thumbs up. Or if it's an unwise decision that the person I'm talking about makes, I want you to put your thumbs down, okay? Wise, unwise. Okay, first situation. Tommy's brother was asking him too many questions about a game he was playing. So Tommy yelled at his brother and told him to get out of his room. Was Tommy wise or was Tommy unwise? Unwise. Tommy should have been more patient with his brother and not hollered at him and thrown him out of his room. That would have been treating his brother the way he wants to be treated. Okay, here's another situation. Remember, you're going to use your thumb, right? There was a boy playing on the playground all alone. So Josh went over to him and asked him to play with his friends. Was Josh's choice a wise choice or was an unwise choice? That was a wise choice. Josh was very kind in asking that boy who was all alone to come and play with he and his friends. Okay, last one. Julia decided her sister had a shirt that she wanted to wear. So she asked her sister, "Can I wear your shirt?" And her sister said no. But then her sister left. So Julia took the shirt and she wore it anyhow. Was that a wise choice or was that an unwise choice? That was an unwise choice. Julia asked for permission. Her sister said no. She should have been content with her own shirt, and she shouldn't have taken that shirt without permission. I hope that you kids have lots of opportunities to practice being wise this week. Make wise choices. And if you find yourself in a situation where it's hard or it seems unfair, remember to pray to God and ask Him for His power and His strength and His wisdom so you can make wise choices. See you next week.
What makes life a tangled mess like being in a sticky web? A. Cotton candy. B. Other people. C. Our sin. Or D. Spiders. Time's up. The answer is C. Our sin makes life a tangled mess. Heroes make what kind of choices? A. Sinful. B. Wise. C. Thoughtless. Or D. Selfish. Time's up. The answer is B. Wise. Heroes make wise choices. In unfair situations, Joseph was A. Lazy, B. Dishonest, C. Tempted, or D. Wise. Time's up. D. Wise. Joseph was wise even in unfair situations. In which situations can you make wise choices? A. Good situations. B. Bad situations. C. Unfair situations. Or D. All situations. Time's up. The answer is D. All situations. You can make wise choices in all situations with God's help. True or false? If we ask God for wisdom, He ignores us. False. The Bible tells us if we ask God for wisdom, He gives it generously.